Hey, good morning once again, church. Welcome again to another Living Hope Today study. So happy you're here. Today we're in 2 Samuel chapter 5, and this is really a fulfillment of what God has promised way back in 1 Samuel, and that is that David, after all those years of running for his life, after being anointed to be the king by the prophet Samuel, David has finally got to the place where power is consolidated and he ascends the throne. And we'll see it today. Let's look at it as we go through the passage. Verse 1, all the tribes of Israel, and keep in mind, church, that when we're talking about Israel here, you can generally consider this to be referring to the northern kingdom. Judah is in the south. The rest of, all but Benjamin are in the north. So there's like 10 tribes in the north and 2 in the south. Well, when it says all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron, we're having a meeting now about consolidating the monarchy to make David king. And they said, we are your own flesh and blood. Okay, we all descended from Abraham. In the past, while Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel on their military campaigns. Right, you remember Saul got so upset because the ladies were singing Saul killed his 1,000 and David his 10,000. And look at this. This is so fascinating to me. And the Lord said to you, you will be my shepherd, my people Israel, and you will become their ruler. So the northern kingdom, even though Ishbosheth was installed as king in the north, they've always known that God had said David was to be the ruler. When all the elders of Israel had come to King David at Hebron, the king made a compact with them at Hebron before the Lord. And what happened? They anointed David king over Israel. Okay, power consolidated, all 12 tribes under the rulership of King David. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. That's a common sentence that we'll get to as we go through the rest of the history of the Bible. As these stories unfold, there's always or almost always a reference to when the king took power and how long he ruled. David, 30, he ruled 40 years, a long time. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. So that's how long the kingdom was divided during David's time. And in Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. So now we're going to see David end up in Jerusalem. Remember, he's in Hebron right now. Verse 6, the king and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites. So he's in Hebron. He reigns in Jerusalem, but we got to get these Jebusites out of Jerusalem. They have conquered the city, owned the city for a long time. They don't seem to think that they need to get out of the way. The king and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who live there. First order of business, we're going to set up the throne in Jerusalem, and that means the Jebusites are going to go. The Jebusites said to David, you will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off. They thought David can't get in here. They thought Jerusalem was absolutely impenetrable. Nevertheless, David captured the fortress of Zion, the city of David. We're not given much of a battle description here. We're just told that he went up there and he conquered them. And on that day, David said, anyone who conquers the Jebusites will have to use the water shaft to reach those lame and blind who are David's enemies. So David basically turns the tables on them and says, look, you guys are the lame and blind ones. That is why they say the blind and lame will not enter the palace. There's more to that verse, but we'll get to that. David then took up residence in the fortress and called it the City of David. Still known that way today, by the way. He built up the area around it from the supporting terraces inward, and he became more and more powerful. Here, watch this. This is such an insightful verse. Because the Lord God Almighty was with him. Why did the Lord pick David? Because of David's heart. What was unique about David's heart? We're not talking about that organ in our bodies that pumps blood. We're talking about that attitude that says, Lord, I belong to you and I will do anything you call me to do. My goal in life is to obey you. That's his heart, his motivation. Well, God says, let me reward that. He'll say that to any of us. If we surrender our lives to the Lord and allow him to move in our lives with our goal being to obey him in every setting, the Lord's blessing will be ours as well. But David, he became more and more powerful. But it's not because he was so smart and so strong. It was because God was with him. Now, Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David along with cedar logs and carpenters and stonemasons, and they built a palace for David. Look at this. The Lord has blessed David with peace, and other kings are trying to enforce that peace by doing nice things for the king of Israel. And David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel. David understands this isn't happening because I'm such a great political ruler, because I'm so powerful in myself, because I can make people do whatever I say. No, David's heart, he knows it's the Lord that's made these things happen. The Lord had established him as king over Israel and had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. Notice, David doesn't even get credit for exalting the kingdom for his sake. No, for the people. God is working through David to bless his people. But after he left Hebron, David took more concubines and wives in Jerusalem, and more sons and daughters were born to him. So now the king is increasing the lineage. These are the names of the children born to him there. Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon. Oh, that rings a bell. Solomon. Ibhar, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphalet. All right. Lots of kids. What are kids? They're a blessing from God. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they went up in full force to search for him. Now what's happening here? They hate Israel. Their intention is not to support him or build something for him. Their intention is to kill him. But David heard about it and went down to the stronghold. So David understands how to hide, how to run for his life, how to gather his strength for battle. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. But now watch this. So David inquired of the Lord. Just stop right there. This sets him apart from almost every king. David says, God, I don't have the wisdom, I don't have the power, I don't have the strength to accomplish your will by myself. I'm willing to be a tool in your hand. I'm willing to be used by you to accomplish your purpose. You just need to tell me what to do. I'm not going to go until I know. David inquired of the Lord. What was the question? Shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me? And the Lord answered him, Go. Look at this. The Lord guides David. Go, for I will surely hand the Philistines over to you. So, in response to God's assurance, what does David do? He has great courage. So David went to Baal Perazim, and there he defeated them. And he said, As waters break out, the Lord has broken out against my enemies before me. Again, David not only obeys God after asking God what to do, but then gives God the credit. The Lord has broken out against my enemies before me. You see the heart of David as he serves the God he loves. He lives by faith. This is why God can exalt him. This is why God wanted him to be king. This is why God keeps telling us, will you give me your life? Excuse me. Will you allow me to run your life and lead you and guide you? Will you follow me, as Jesus asks us? Well, here you see what happens to those who obey. So that place was called Baal Perazim. Notice that the Philistines get defeated? Well, the Philistines abandoned their idols there. David and his men carried them off. Once more, the Philistines came up and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. So they didn't learn the first time. We're going to do it again. So David does the same thing. Again, not relying on his own strength, wisdom, power, might, understanding. David inquired of the Lord. And he answered, do not go straight up, but circle around behind them and attack them in front of the balsam trees. So notice this. Now the Lord's not only approving the attack, but he's giving the strategy on how to win the battle. God is intimately involved in helping David conquer the enemies of Israel. As soon as you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, move quickly, because that will mean the Lord has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. Look at this. We're told in verse 24 it's going to be God himself that's going to take the action that's going to make the victory possible and cause the defeat of his enemies. So David did as the Lord commanded him. And what happens? Just notice that so simple verse. David did what? He did what God told him to do. Oh, wow. Gee, guess what? God's telling us to do stuff today, right? He's telling us how to live. His word is true. How does David attain the victories in his life as the newly ascended king? He asks God what to do. When God tells him what to do, he does it. Sounds so basic, so simple, doesn't it? But how many of us live our lives thinking we know better? We're not going to ask God anything until we get ourselves into trouble. David's not willing to move forward until he knows and understands well what God wants. And here it is. David did as the Lord commanded. And what happened? Total victory. The king has ascended. Power has been consolidated. We see in the example of David that obedience to God overrules all the might and power there is. God fights for Israel through David because David obeys. Are we going to obey today and walk in the way that God's called us? I hope so. Serve him well today, church, and God bless you.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.